Okay. Hello, my name is Christopher. I am the introducer, and our group will be presenting our topic on tele-ABA versus in-home therapy. So what is tele-ABA? Well, telehealth behavioral health consists of a board-certified behavior analyst providing their work, but through video conferencing from a remote location. This type of technology can be very valuable as it provides behavior analytic methods, enhancing the services provided to those who acquire ABA. Within these services, it provides real-time training to parents and behavior therapists, consultation to families, and effective delivery of ABA procedures in remote areas where services are not typically available in person. So today we will be discussing a lot of the pros and benefits of tele-ABA, and we will also get into many of the cons of the system. So throughout the presentation, we will also touch on the research that's out there and provide many figures and charts and graphs for supporting the research. So in our group, we have Hannah, who will be our summarizer, Rebecca, who will be our researcher 1, Samantha, our researcher 2, Erin, our illustrator, and concluding with Tiffany, our fielder, who will be going over questions and answers at the end of our presentation. So across the country, remote areas that include small towns, rural terrain, or a general lack of resources can mean the difference between life-altering treatments for individuals with ASD and their families. But is it ethical to provide ABA services from afar? What issues or concerns may be addressed when servicing clients remotely? And can the BCBA be involved enough to ensure that best practice is implemented and ethical guidelines are followed? These sensitive concerns are what is worth discussing, but first we must gather what the BCBA's role as a clinical professional is in this field. So from a clinical and ethical perspective, it is the responsibility of the behavior analyst to ensure that services are met and well established when accepting clients. Therefore, when tele-ABA services are implemented, proper protocols and any ethical concerns must be met prior to beginning intervention. The behavior analyst is obligated to ensure that all parties are affected during services, and the BCBA's role is also to support and advocate for the client by making sure each step is taken rightfully, whether it is a change in a new clinical direction, the implementation of new goals, legal rights of the client, or training techniques to the therapists or parents. So under the Ethics Code 2.05, it states the rights of the client are paramount and behavior analysts support the client's legal rights and prerogatives. So therefore, the client's legal rights must be protected and they need to be well informed on the rights of services and practices according to the Ethics Code 2.05D. So when considering the Do Not Harm clause, the BCBA must treat the client with compassion, dignity, and care, and place the client's needs above all other variables. It is also important to note that the BCBA should only be practicing their work in the realm of their competency and nothing further. So obtaining consent when considering tele-ABA is also critical, as it states in Ethics Code 2.05C, permission for electronic recording of interviews and service delivery sessions is secured from clients and relevant staff in relevant settings. So if there's any discomfort in the recording of services, it is mandatory that consent be utilized and agreed upon prior to beginning services for tele-ABA. So each decision made must be in the best interest of the client and their well-being. Whenever a new decision is established, there will always be the question of whether it is the right thing to do, if it is worth doing, and what it means to be a great behavior analyst. When those new clinical decisions are made at the utmost ethical level, the parties affected must be well informed and educated as well. Those new strategies or techniques must also be written and applied for intervention and not just verbally stated. So, do clinical professionals follow all these standards when in practice of tele-ABA? What are some of the ethical concerns to evaluate to ensure that all board-certified behavior analysts involved in tele-ABA are following these guidelines? So today we will hear from two different perspectives. So those who believe that tele-ABA is a service capable of making meaningful changes in individuals who live in rural areas while holding true to the principles of ABA, and those who believe that the ethical boundaries have been breached and call for a focus on in-home therapy. So on that note, I will be handing it over now to Hannah, who is our summarizer, and we'll be discussing some of the pros of Tele ABA and briefly go over just some of the research findings.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So the first point that we're going to discuss is that web-based training indicated significant increases in parental knowledge of ABA behavior interventions. Using technology to provide ABA services remotely was first reported in the fall 2006 issue of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. Over the years, results of multiple studies have indicated that significant increases in parental knowledge of behavior interventions. One study, post-training data, showed that parents' implementation of basic ABA procedures increased by 40% after using only the web-based training procedures. And Rebecca is going to continue with more research to support these claims.
Hi all. So according to a study by Connolly that I believe Aaron has a visual to support after I read a little bit, after a 5-hour web-based training, parents indicated a higher ability to request for evidence-based treatments in their child's IEP, and they were overall satisfied with their training after that 5 hours. So Erin, if you wanted to show those visuals now.
Okay. So if you look here at these graphs, so it shows you the data they collected on evidence-based knowledge, the ability to identify evidence-based treatments, the ability to select evidence-based treatments, and also parent empowerment, which is also important. So as you can see with what Rebecca discussed, there was an increase in parent skills following parent web-based training. So this next visual, let's see. So this is another study that measured parents' pre and post skill assessment. I mean, as you can see, there was a significant increase in skills demonstrated following parent training across participants. So now I'm going to hand it over to Samantha.
I'm Samantha, and I will be giving the rebuttal to this point. In a field that is so data-driven, for the issue of fidelity is a big concern when using telehealth ABA. In a study done by Hepburn, it was reported that while using telehealth ABA, therapists are unable to directly address behaviors that are happening off camera. Without direct supervision, therapists are able to ensure fidelity, which violates their obligation to accurately collect data. And Erin, I think you have a visual for that one.
Yes. So just referring back to the BACB Code of Ethics, 3.01 Behavior Analytic Assessment, Section B. So behavior analysts have an obligation to collect and graphically display data using behavior analytic conventions in a manner that allows for decisions and recommendations for behavior change program development. So this directly coincides with the fact that as behavior analysts, you have to make sure that you're able to graph those data to ensure fidelity of the intervention plan. So we'll go back to Hannah.
Okay, that summed up our first point. Our second point that we wanted to discuss was that telehealth therapy is beneficial for families that are living in remote areas. Web-based therapy provides families who live in rural areas opportunity to participate in a series of online tutorials and video conferencing sessions in which they can learn ABA practices. So researchers found that they could help moms and dads substantially increase their knowledge of ABA and apply these techniques without forcing the families to make long drives to a clinic. families living in these remote communities that lack therapy offerings altogether have also particularly big implications with the teletherapy availability. Erin, I'll go to you.
And actually, we'll move on to Rebecca for a second.
Yeah, okay. So I actually have a couple articles that I found on using web-based instruction and workshops to teach community-based providers in rural areas. So for this article, there were tutorials, interactive workshops, and videos, and there were 2 separate phases, and they found greater results in the second phase to show that this was a feasible way to access high quality training. And all participants said to see a significant increase. And the second one is behavioral telehealth consultation with families of children with ASD. And each family resided an average of 68 miles away from a facility where they could receive services. So they participated in video conferences with a BCBA doctoral for functional behavior assessments. And they had weekly assessments of 45 minutes. And they also found this to be effective in conducting the FBA and coaching parents. And they did find that there should be more research for them to be able to consider it evidence-based. And then Erin with visuals.
Okay. So just looking at a larger scale here, you can see kind of the ratio of behavior analysts to populations across the globe. So this really paints a clear picture of the need for behavior analytic services across the globe. I mean, Mexico alone has 1 BCBA to 130 million civilians. So now we can look down at this graph below, and it gives us an idea of the percentage of countries' population using the internet. So it's possible to deliver these services via telehealth, and the amount of people living in rural communities who may need these services is extreme, but the possibilities are definitely there. So moving on to Samantha.
Thanks, Erin. So in order to receive web-based therapy, clients must have access to up-to-date technology. Equipment or internet access is not sufficient. This will hinder their services. Some of the families may not have access to high-speed internet because of location or lack of finances. One study that I looked at reported that moderate technical glitches, defined as brief disconnection with successful rejoining within a few minutes, were more common, with an average occurrence of 0.87 per session. Of the 17 families in the study, 41% were disconnected at least one time during their 10-session intervention. Repeated technological issues can be frustrating for the parent and may deter them from services. Back to you, Erin.
Okay. Okay, so just doing some research on, issues that might occur with, internet usage, so internet outages across the globe. There are several factors, and these are just a few of them, but directed disconnection. So, for example, in Ethiopia, internet connectivity had been shut off for several hours to prevent fake news from circulating on social media. So the government actually shut down the internet. So, this would obviously be an issue for those needing services. Severe weather, that's one we all have to deal with: typhoons, earthquakes, wildfires, and floods. And that's just a short list of the possible natural causes of outages across the globe at any given time, things that we can't control. Network malfunction, so failures due to issues with telecommunications operators can cause widespread outages. And then this is kind of a unique one, but exams. So this was an example out of Iraq, but they had nationwide exams going on, and it actually shut down the network for an extended period of time just because so many people were on the internet at one time. So we'll take it back to Hannah.
All right. The third point that we're going to discuss is that teletherapy is a more cost-effective way to train parents. So providing teletherapy can add a number of clients served by eliminating the need to travel to the service delivery sites. This is for the behavior analyst. So that will increase the profits for the BCBA. Also, the higher customer satisfaction with the training and results also adds to the behavior analyst self-esteem. So those are pros for the behavior analyst as well. Web-based therapy is also more cost-effective for the client. Medicaid currently provides state-specific reimbursement for telehealth services in 48 states and Washington, D.C. Also, more and more insurance carriers are moving toward reimbursement of telehealth services. This is in large part due to the Affordable Care Act, and there's a push for lower costs. For the justification of this type of service delivery usually depends on or upon the difficulty of access to a provider based upon a child's or a client's remote location. So we are seeing more and more ways for clients to get funding for online services. Go to Rebecca next.
I have an article on telehealth and autism treating challenging behaviors at a lower cost, and they had 3 service models: at-home ABA, clinic-based tele-ABA, and home-based tele-ABA, sorry. And all were successful in the reduction of behavior, and that was a sample size of about 94 children. Telehealth home therapy is the lowest cost, like Hannah had said. And there is a visual, I believe Erin has coming up, that kind of shows the differences in cost.
Okay, yeah, so if you see here on the far right, you have home telehealth, and that is just under $160 weekly. Then as we move over to the left, the amount of money per week increases. So we can definitely see from this that there's a significant difference in cost of in-home therapy when compared to home telehealth, totaling about $100 a week difference. So yeah, so we'll move on to Samantha.
So in a study done by Hepburn, it was reported that when the parent-child interactions were observed on screen, the clinicians struggled to coach the parents in a manner that felt dignified to all involved. If the parent was face-to-face in a session, therapists can take the parent aside to properly coach on how to handle the behavior without losing the integrity of the client, which is the most important thing when doing therapy. Back to you.
Okay, so going back to the Code of Ethics here, looking at 4.07, environmental conditions that interfere with implementation. And this is kind of reaching a little bit, but thinking about how to, have a private conversation with a parent about a client's behavior. In that kind of setting, it can be difficult. You always want to make sure that the client retains their dignity. So if you look here, if environmental conditions prevent implementation of a behavior change program, behavior analysts recommend that other professional assistance be sought. And then Section B, if environmental conditions hinder implementation of the behavior change program, behavior analysts seek to eliminate the environmental constraints or identify in writing the obstacles to doing so. So you can look at this in a sense of this type of environmental condition for therapy. It might hinder implementation because you're not able to have a private conversation with the parent about the behavior that's going on in a way that maintains dignity and respect for the client. Going back to Hannah.
All right, our last point that we will bring up is that telehealth therapy does provide access to immediate ABA through the online resources, and this reduces the long wait lists for clients. So clients no longer need to wait for a BCBA for months and months anymore. They can simply download or pay for a program online and educate themselves, the parents. So being able to save this time will be invaluable when they're able to see the results more quickly with their own children. To Rebecca.
Yeah, so I have another article, Increasing Access to ASD Imitation Intervention via Telehealth Parent Training Program, which is exactly what Hannah was stating. It's just a program that is easier accessible than being on a wait list. And it showed with children an average of 42 months old that they did see an increase in their imitation skills using this remote coaching telehealth program. And visuals to show that.
Okay. So this visual was taken actually from that study that we discussed earlier from Ball State University. And so this really was looking at the satisfaction of parents after these web-based trainings. So as you can see here, after the training was conducted, this level of satisfaction was actually fairly high. And if you look at this last one, do you prefer web-based training over in-person training? Strong preference for web-based training was actually at 30%, which is pretty high. Slight preference was at 30%. And of course, you have some people who prefer in-person training, which is fine. But this just goes to show that it's possible to conduct web-based training for parents and, you know, have that satisfaction rate from them. So would you recommend this to other parents of children with ASD? And 100% yes, they would. So that just goes to show that these types of trainings are effective. And again, going back to that parent empowerment, it does, you know, help in that sense as well. So, all right, moving on to Samantha.
Right, and for my last rebuttal, so because telehealth ABA is relatively new and in the field, there is still a lot of research that has not been explored. A study stated that future studies will need to recruit a larger and more diverse sample to examine the use of telehealth with participants of different ethnicities, levels of education, and income. Majority of the studies focused on middle-class families who are highly motivated to conduct therapy, and factors such as low income and education could negatively alter the effectiveness of telehealth and ABA. So I think we'll move to the conclusion.
Just going back again to the code of ethics. Let's see here. Okay. So looking down at characteristics of responsible research, and this is going to be through all fields of research, not just, you know, applied behavior analysis, but there is a call to make sure that your participants are widely reached, and it's not just, you know, a small pool of participants, because you can really skew the data if you are only targeting, you know, certain participants. So that's something to think about, and especially with telehealth, there is not a lot of research with large groupings of participants. So sending it over to Tiffany.
Excuse me. So as part of the conclusion, the frequently asked questions, they are, and the first one is, what's the difference between in-home and telehealth ABA? Well, in-home means the professional comes to you. An ABA professional comes to your home and possibly other locations, such as a community-based outing, the grocery store, the playground, or even, you know, possible extracurricular activities that they can provide services for. With telehealth, it is services are offered over the internet, wireless, and satellite, and or telephone media. The next frequently asked question is, who pays for these services? Well, each state is very different. So but in most cases, insurance, including Medicaid and Medicare, pay for part, if not all, of the services. So you have to check with your insurance company to see if they will take care of that. Yet telehealth is the less expensive than in-home. On average, in-home is $335 per week, where telehealth is only $58 per week. The next frequently asked question is, how much therapy does one need? Well, this depends on the evaluation. A BCBA will recommend how many hours for service that will range from anywhere from 6 to 30 hours per week. Both telehealth and in-home can accommodate these hours. Who performs the services? Well, in-home, a board-certified behavior analyst, a behavior tech, or a registered behavior tech under the supervision of a BCBA will come in and provide these services. With telehealth, parents or families will provide the help under the guidance of a BCBA after they've gone through a training program. So in conclusion, you've heard from both sides of the benefits of telehealth, ABA, and in-home services. And when deciding which of these would best for you, keep in mind of how involved you can be. And during this process, you need to consider your technological aspects of Tele ABA, and you need to consider if you have interest in learning ABA, and also what you can afford, whether your insurance covers it or not. Also, keep in mind that Tele ABA is new and not all the hiccups have been worked out. It is currently limited to rural areas, although some bigger cities do have it more readily available. On the other side, in-home can be limited due to the fact that there's not enough behavior analysts to go around, so there could be a wait, and that wait could be significant. And whether it's right for you is up to you, but please take the time to do an informed decision. And if you have any further information, we have references that will be listed so that you can make those decisions. So thank you for your time and consideration, and have a good day.